Welcome to Off Hours, a conversation between John Edwards and Chris Manning.
Last episode, I touched briefly on the fact that I had experimented with a very finely controlled soldering iron to do a bit of bluing and wasn't particularly happy with the results that I got, so I didn't pursue that much further. But a couple of days later, you sent me a link to an Instagram post by Nicholas Hacko, an Australian watchmaker, who has outfitted a soldering iron with a custom jig that he uses for bluing screws. So how did you come across this?
Yeah, I follow Nicholas on Instagram. I came across him through John Saunders' NYCCNC YouTube channel. He was in Australia and ended up doing a shop visit while he was there with Nicholas. And so I sort of came across him that way. And he and his family, they're in the process of trying to make the first Australian-built watches. This was one of the videos he posted on Instagram showing how he blues the screws for their movements. And I thought this was interesting. I don't think it is nearly as precise as and controllable as the methods that we were talking about, which use a kiln. But it certainly is an interesting way of sort of quickly producing a bluing that is reasonably accurate and probably good enough for what a lot of people are doing in sort of a mass-produced watch.
Yeah, I can see from this quick clip that it still suffers from some of the consistency issues that I found using a soldering iron, and that the hue of blue that you're getting across the head of the screw there isn't absolutely consistent. There's a bit of a fade to it, but for all intents and purposes, it gets the job done, and you end up with a blued screw at the end of the day. And I'm sure with some more refinements, you could probably dial in the consistency even better. So this has inspired me to maybe bust out my mill in the next couple of weeks and whip a little jig up like this for my own soldering iron and see if I can perhaps improve on my previous attempts.
Yeah, I think it's certainly worthwhile experimenting a little bit to see if it will work. The other person that I saw on Instagram who has a similar setup is a gentleman in South Korea. His Instagram feed is 3hands_studio. Unfortunately, I don't know what his name is. He usually posts in Korean, and so I unfortunately don't read Korean, so I have no idea what it is that he's saying. But he, in response to Nicholas's post, he posted the one that he made himself. Again, he's created a plate similar to what Nicholas had, although the one thing that he's done, which I like, is that on the back side of it, he can rotate the thing around, and on the back side of it, he has a more traditional tray where he can put brass filings into it and heat it up in the sort of a tray of brass filings and use it for slightly larger parts if he's trying to temper a larger piece, like let's say a pinion, then he can do that on the backside. So that was a nice little touch as well, a slightly different take on it than what Nicholas had done.
Yeah, this is a significantly more substantial jig. So once you do get it up to temperature, provided you can get an even distribution from the soldering iron, it should yield better results.
Whether you're using an open flame from something like a butane torch or an alcohol lamp or whatever it happens to be, I think having a large amount of mass there will certainly help with the consistency. You're going to find the temperature drops less as you put the cold screw onto it, and it's going to heat more evenly, regardless of how it is that you're heating it. So this design from 3Hands Studio would certainly be an improvement over what Nicholas did.
Yeah, so these both look like they have the soldering irons cranked way up in order to be able to hit the blues.
Yeah, I think it would be interesting to try this at a lower temperature as opposed to cranking the temperature on the iron.
Yeah, further experimentation to be done. Now, the whole reason we wound up down the rabbit hole of bluing last episode was because of Crivia's adept skill at bluing. And I was reminded of a video I'd seen some time ago. It was promotional video that they had done. And according to what's portrayed in this promotional video, Recep hand blues components, and he actually uses a small pan that's very similar in design to one of the ones that the ClickSpring channel published the technical drawings for, if you wanted to make your own. And he uses that over a classical watchmaker's alcohol lamp. So my hat's off to Recep if he is indeed hand bluing every one of these components and getting them to come out as consistent and clean as he has. It's truly remarkable, and just one more reason why his pieces fetch the handsome sum that they do.
Yeah, I'd be interested to find out how much of this is just marketing. Obviously, he knows how to hand blue, and he can hand blue effectively. That's certainly not in question. But I'm curious as to how much of the production work he does like this, and how much of it is just being shot like this for the video. In another bit of follow-up from last episode, we talked about Frodshem's new watch that they made. They've been working on for the better part of a decade now, and we were talking a little bit about that movement as well as the dial. And when I was speaking about the dial, I said that it was an enamel dial, and of course it is not an enamel dial, it's a ceramic dial. And we even spoke about that on a previous episode, so I don't know what I was thinking when I started talking about that as an enamel dial, but it is in fact a ceramic dial. Thanks to Matt, the watch nerd, for pointing that out to me on Twitter this morning. I don't know what I was thinking when I was saying that, because it is certainly an impressive feat of engineering, this ceramic dial that they've worked on, and we had even spent a fair bit of time talking about that. So it is not an enamel dial that's on there.
Yeah, it was way back in episode 14.
One of the articles you sent me this week was a story by SJX on watches by SJX, and it's about a chronometer by Bernhard Zwins. I think that's how you pronounce that. This looks like an interesting watch. Do you want to tell me a little bit about this chronometer that he's made?
So Bernhard Zwins was an apprentice to Philippe Dufour, and he's gone on to work for other brands that are very well known for their finishing. And he has been spending so much time finishing a timepiece that he has been working towards releasing that he has actually gone off and made a slightly easier to finish piece in the meantime, because while he's still working on this other series, it's coming up on 10 years now that he's been working on this other piece, but he has announced what he's calling the Founders series, and it's based on the work of an Austrian watchmaker, Joseph Thaddeus Wiener, and he's dubbing this the Wiener chronometer. And what's interesting about this particular watch is the balance wheel, which he has transposed fairly directly from a marine chronometer that Joseph Wiener had created hundreds of years ago. And this balance wheel in this chronometer is bowl-shaped, and it is free-sprung, which is the best way to go as far as regulating a balance wheel is concerned. But the reason that this is interesting and that it's bowl-shaped is that it makes it easier to adjust the inertia nuts, and that's what allows you to adjust the timing on a free-sprung balance wheel.
This balance wheel is interesting. I had never seen the original before, and it's certainly a remarkable shape, and it's not the kind of balance wheel that you're used to seeing in any kind of watch. This angled wheel that's sort of forming part of a cone is certainly a different design. I do like the look of it, though. I think it's quite remarkable, and it's a good look inside of the watch itself. The movement is a little bit plain from the back because it has a 3/4 plate on the back, which, similar to the Kadoke watch we mentioned last episode, working on this would probably be a bit of a challenge just because of trying to line everything up on this large plate while you're assembling it. But it's a fairly striking movement from behind, just a little bit different than what you're used to seeing.
Yeah, not a particularly fun piece to have to assemble or to service, but in terms of manufacturing and getting it done and out there, similar to Kudoke's piece, this is going to be a lot quicker to manufacture and to finish. You've only got essentially that single chamfer all around that big 3/4 plate. Mind you, he did make somewhat of a challenging balance bridge with the nice interior angles, and that's all going to take a fair bit of time to finish well. But given the amount of practice that Zvins has executing at this level, I mean, this is almost a walk in the park for him.
Yeah, that balance bridge is a beautiful shape, and it's certainly not the kind of thing that a beginner would want to try and finish, because that it has some challenging angles in there. But as you say, he's had a lot of experience doing high-end finishing, so I expect that it's not going to be very challenging for him.
Which is a big part of what's going to allow him to release these watches to the public much quicker than this other piece that he has been working on for years.
Now, the other remarkable thing about this are the enamel dials, and yes, this time these are actually enamel dials. I don't know who's making them. I don't think he is, but the dials look really nice. The blue in particular is an interesting look. He has a sort of a grayish blue dial with black text on it, which is quite nice. It's not high contrast, but I do like the look of it. I think it looks quite good. And I also like that he has the second subdial at 12 o'clock as opposed to 6 o'clock. I think it's nice to see that change up and something a little bit different in his layout.
Another interesting point about the enamel dials that he's made is that they are the numerals and the text that you see on the dial are all metal from underneath the enamel, and the enamel's painted over everything, and then the dials are flat lapped until the metal on all the indices shows back through. So it's a really intriguing approach to the way that dial's being produced.